what's going on, guys? This is Brandon, your trusted realtor, and I'm coming to you with another great episode chock full of information and valuable content. So let's dive right into it. Wow, that coffee went down the wrong pipe. Now, let's talk. I was here this morning sitting around reading some articles while I was having my tea, and then I shifted over to my coffee. And Iman, which is a resource that I use, they were talking about some of the 7 objections that homeowners or that sellers and buyers have as it relates to the process of going through a real estate transaction. Now, we all know, and you've heard me say before, that buying a home is a deeply personal transaction. You have to decide yourself when is the right time for you to buy a home, when is the right time for you to sell the home. All those things have to come to confluence and have to come to a head at really the right time. And really, being a real estate agent is like trying to shoot a bullet down with another bullet. We're trying to position ourselves right in front of people that really need our services. And one of the advantages, or at least that I find, is that not just being reactionary to people, being a resource. So there's an association and a relationship. Both of those things I find to be very important in the transaction. And these 7 objections that people have are usually the reasons that individuals, and I've heard these myself as a real estate agent and someone who has to market to people, are reasons why individuals choose not to be a part of the transaction or they decide to delay. So, without further ado, the first is I'm afraid to start the home buying process. This reason usually is driven by a sense or a fear of commitment. For a seller, it is the fear most individuals live in their home for 5 to 7 years. And if you've lived in that property beyond 5 to 7 years and it's your first property and it's not your forever home, the question is, what is your commitment currently to that property or to the area that requires that you continue to stay there, right? If we talk about what home ownership means in part, it doesn't only mean having stability or a place of your own and for your family, but it also means having a place that will appreciate in value and that is a forced savings for you. So that way you can expand and increase your overall net wealth. And that's one of the valuable tenets of home ownership. So the question is that if you are still living in that property after 5 or 7 years, what is keeping you in that area? What's keeping you in that community? If you are a renter, you have to ask yourself, what is the commitment that you have? You have no issues committing to a lease or committing to moving from one apartment to the next apartment or from one side of town to the other side of town. What prevents you, if you're not leaving your city, and every year maybe you talk about leaving, but you don't? What is preventing you from making the commitment to purchase a property? So I am afraid to start the home buying process usually is ingrained in some level of fear. And in my experience, sometimes with renters, that they show better than they look on paper. And a lot of times it's because you're juking and jiving in order to keep up with the Joneses, as they say, but you really haven't done those things in the background to prepare yourself. Or because you don't understand the nuances of the process, you're afraid to make a commitment to a property. Or you feel like at some point in life, things are going to change or shift and you want to be a hermit and be able to move to a new city. That's typically not how things work. And life has the propensity to pass you by before something extraordinary like that happens. So it really, again, it's personal to you, but you have to ask yourself, or at least stop for a moment and think about it. The second is, it's a bad time to buy. Typically, when people say that it's a bad time to buy, that's associated with economic factors as it relates to the market. They're deferring to buying a property or selling their home as it relates to market forces. In 2020, the pandemic has demonstrated that this has truly been a seller's market. And for those sellers that did not defer maintenance on their properties and that were ready to go and that had been in them for a period of time, had already seen some appreciation or they had equity in the property. And now they were raring to go, seeing themselves being able to sell their home at list price or even 20, 30, 40% above what they were asking for the price for their property. It has created an amazing opportunity, especially in the DC region. If you are someone who was a renter and shifted to being a buyer and you are in this environment, then you know all too well the struggle that many buyers have had with the low inventory and the inability for many people to win a contract or get their offer accepted so that way they can move into a house. For renters, you also have to remember that you yourselves are not off the hook. It's a bad time usually translates to a lack of savings. The reality is that buying a home is not free. It's not you use a down payment and the closing cost assistance program and you get into a home with no skin in the game. While some of those options do exist, that's not truly the reality or how things should always go. You should always be invested in the property and have some money to put down. Remember, there's initial funds that you'll need, and I always estimate you'll need between $3,000 and $5,000 up front, just depending on your locality, to start the home purchase process. That's going to include things that we've covered in previous videos, things like the home inspection and the earnest money deposit. Those are going to be upfront costs that you have to pay, and we've talked about those in previous videos. So, of course, the thought here is that it's most important that you make time to make a connection with a lender, because a lender is going to be able to set you on a path of a goal and an objective. Remember, it's not failure not to reach your dreams, but it is failure not to have dreams to reach. And part of this process of you reaching your dream of home ownership is creating a plan, or at least understanding how much you can afford. And if now is not a right time for you because you don't have money saved, then now is the time to begin to reverse engineer that process. Figure out what it is, the net amount or the total amount that you need to save, and begin to work towards that process, and then fill in the gaps with down payment and closing cost assistance. The next thing that we often hear is that the home I want is too expensive. So I personally believe that buyers have been spoiled. You have access to all of this information. Sometimes you don't necessarily know what it means, or you have no idea what the source of that information is, like the Zestimate, which the Zestimate is a great opportunity to get an idea or a ballpark figure, but there's so many other things that go into the background of that calculation that really impacts the accuracy of that. When you look at a comparative market analysis that comes from a real estate agent, that gives you a truer sense of value. Also, a lot of times buyers, they fail to remember that your mortgage is broken down over 30 years. So yeah, just because you qualify, two things to remember, just because you qualify for a higher amount doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend all of that money. And two, you don't know what you qualify for until you have that discussion with a lender, and that lender can provide you with a pre-approval. That pre-approval, or that pre-qualification rather, the pre-qualification can give you a sense of what the estimate is that a lender will be willing to give you, so that way you can get into a home. Finally, for buyers, one of the things that I also have to say, and I urge this to you with all due respect, if you have champagne taste and beer money, that's something that you really need to take into mind when you enter into this home buying process. You can't get everything that you want, more than likely, as it relates to the purchase of a home, if you're not willing to pay that cost. We're not in an environment where you're just gonna come upon a deal. The reality is that investors are aiming, or investors are buying properties and flipping them for the purpose of producing income. And as a result, anything that they do or add to them is going to be considered customization. And if you customize a property, you're going to pay for that. Or if they customize the property, they're going to charge for that customization. So it's important to really set your expectations for what you can afford in your locality. I know here in the DMV, sometimes it really is about taking people away from HGTV land and thinking about those things, and people who, who sharpen pencils and have a $1.7 million budget, and they have these amazing homes, versus what in reality you can actually afford with your money and what that actually looks like for your renovation. That also means that as a buyer, you're going to have to be a little bit flexible potentially on looking at other geographic areas that you may not have considered. In DC, I often encourage people that you look east of the river. There's loads of opportunity there. You'll get more land and an increased opportunity for appreciation. This next one really goes out to sellers, or the fourth one being the agent commission is too high. Now, sellers often feel like they are paying too much for the services offered by a real estate agent and they want to get a bargain. The reality, it really underscores the fact that everybody wants to get a bargain. Everyone wants to feel like they walked away with some extra money or change in their pockets. Totally fine. But this is where you as a real estate agent have to have a marketing plan in place and be able to demonstrate your value. You have to have a proven system and processes that show why you offer more, why you offer value, and why the services that you're putting forward are worth the cost that you're negotiating. And always remember that you're negotiating this with the seller. So, something from nothing is still nothing. So keep that in mind and have that as a perspective when you work with it. But that also doesn't mean that you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater as well. Now, for buyers, you have absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be working with a real estate agent, or at least have a relationship with a real estate agent. You are in this strange place where you can talk to a professional, a business owner. They have probably years and dozens of transactions under their belt. They've done millions of dollars in asset movements and transaction movements. And you get to talk to that person who's going to give you information that is going to fundamentally change the scope and direction of your life. Where else can you get that for free? Nowhere. So having a relationship with a real estate agent costs you nothing because you don't pay anything for it. So the idea that the commission or anything is too high as a buyer, that has nothing to do with you. And you should take advantage of the skill sets and the resources offered by your real estate agent to help you navigate the process. The fifth is that that another agent will list the house for more. This often happens with sellers when they believe that their home is the bee's knees and they should list their property way above asking price. There's two things as a real estate agent that I take into consideration, which is the area market, which is specific than a overall market analysis. The area market is what has sold within a quarter mile of your home. What is this geographic area doing? How are properties selling? What are they listing for? Being able to convey that information specifically to your seller allows them to put things into perspective more. Also, this is also where your ability to demonstrate your value comes in hand. The sixth comment or objection to a real estate transaction that was listed in the article was, I'm not willing to make updates to my home. Now, as I was setting up for this video, I'm filming downstairs instead of filming upstairs. And one of the things that I realized as a point that I'll give you as a tip is that if you ever have someone who says, I'm not willing to make updates and renovations to the home, record the property. Record the property after you have the conversation with them, walk through the property, and show them the video. Video has an amazing opportunity of highlighting things that we are blind to in the naked eye. If you see my refrigerator here, this was full with little bitty tchotchkes that we have collected from all of our trips from Barcelona and some from Dubai and family and cars. And as I saw that in the video for this recording, I was like, that looks tacky. So I moved all of that stuff to the backside or the side of the refrigerator for the purpose of recording, because being able to see what your property looks like when it's recorded has a huge impact on the psyche. Also, not wanting to make updates to a property really goes to the sense that somebody feels that they are being judged. That seller feels that someone is coming in and saying that you didn't do a good job in maintaining this property, or you neglected something, and so now you need to fix it. Get over that. Focus on the objective, which is to sell the property and to meet their goal or objective. whatever that price point is. The next is, or the seventh one is, I don't want to lower my price. Now, I've heard this more times. Actually, no, I'm usually pretty spot on with the pricing. I've talked to other people who've had to go through this with their clients a lot, where they've had to lower the price in order for it to be competitive. Again, this all comes to having a clear understanding and insight into the market and that perspective, and being able to use numbers and analytics to really reinforce a point. Also, it also comes with knowing the market fluctuations. Markets have seasonalities, and you as a real estate agent have to be able to convey to your client that, hey, Mrs. Seller or Mr. Seller, based on the season right now, we're expecting that we will have to price the property X thousands of dollars lower because we have fewer buyers in the market, in the ecosystem. So being able to make those adjustments and those connections with your buyers, so that way they can frame the discussion or frame the decision they're making, is critically important. And then that was the last of the reasons or objections that people have. So if any of these specifically hit home from you, leave a comment down below. Or if you are a seller or a buyer and you still find yourself in this place where you are undecided, what is your particular reason for being undecided about going through the process? I love to hear from you, and I love to talk to you more. So remember, if you found value in this, remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button, because all of your support means that more individuals will see this great content and will be able to help even more individuals. I'm Brandon, your trusted realtor, and stay tuned in and in tune to the latest and greatest realty here in the DMV and everywhere else. Take care, guys.